And we're live.
Okay.
I haven't had a whole lot of experience with IEPs, so it's kind of cool to see like how everyone's was, I guess, different. I mean, like similar and different at the same time, obviously. But it's kind of fun to look at.
Yeah, I thought it was. I definitely the whole time I was doing this assignment was a little nervous that I've never before. So I was like, hopefully I'm doing this. Like, it makes sense.
You want to start with yours, Sierra?
Sure.
Okay.
My book out so I can. It's like practically a book. So I got my highlighter and my pen to take notes.
You're so prepared. Well, I was interested to look at yours because your student is so young. So like the post-secondary goals, I was kind of, interested to see that.
That was definitely a really interesting part. I was like talking to her parents. I was doing an interview with her parents, and I was like, "So, it's an interesting thing to be talking about your 6-year-old, but what do you think?"
Exactly.
Yeah.
I guess it's good to think about that young. I mean,
yeah.
Why not?
Well, and I guess working through the process, it felt really weird doing this project, but at the same time, after completing it, it was really cool because I do think it's important for parents to be thinking about. I think it's important for teachers to be thinking about, even at this young of age. We already know she already has showing great strengths in like empathy and social emotional type things where we're like, we could start building some of these skills so soon, and she would, it would be helpful for her.
Yeah. I have it pulled up.
I kind of, when I was doing this or just trying to figure out how to do this on my own kid, I kind of took Jeremy to task a little bit about it, and the feedback that I got from that was that really like you can just take a look at their whatever for that post-secondary goals as their transition goals. So what is it that how are you basically how are you preparing them for their next step? Like, what do they need to be like a successful elementary student next year? Or like in my case, like my student was going on to middle school, and so that kind of transition. So you can do that, and you're right. I mean, there's things where you can kind of take a look at that long-term trajectory, but also just for when you're working with the younger kids, it was acceptable by him just to do just to look at it in terms of you preparing them for their next step.
That's a really good way to look at it. So she could do something like maybe her student needs to focus on like working in groups,
right?
Like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like on task time or things like that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good point. I kind of am remembering that's kind of what I tried to focus on, or just some of her like one of the things is to like look at a peer, like just make eye contact. So I did like try to put like post-secondary like that, and then also we're just doing like a lot of self-help skills, which I feel like it's interesting because I mean that's what we're in the high school grades too. Sometimes you're working on some of those just like bathrooming skills and quotes and those types of things.
Let's see what else.
Yeah, but it was interesting to read about the life plans of a preschooler.
Yeah, but it was really cool that her mom is a teacher in the public school, and so it was really interesting to kind of talk to her on her perspective of when these should be introduced, because I think she was able to kind of be really realistic about it, because she's like, I am a teacher, I know like what's going on, and so she she was like, I definitely think like these types of skills should be introduced a lot earlier, And so although they laughed about some parts, like, what kind of job would you like Willow to do? And it was like, that's kind of funny, but at the same time, we were really realistic and where we work and stuff. She's like, we would like her to be a part of a community like where I work, and but also teaching her some of those skills. Like one of the things I tried to put in there is that she really likes to do like housework, and when she's successful at that, like she loves to help us wash the tables. She loves to help us sweep, whether that's always like to the highest accuracy, but those are things that she already really works towards and it like finds success working towards. So try to include some of those things.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I did look at it. I'm just looking at it again. Let's see. I mean, you were really descriptive. Like, I felt like I knew a lot about your student after reading it. Let's see.
Let's see if I can bring it up without dropping out of here completely. Hang on.
Yeah, don't do that because I don't know how you get back in once you're gone.
Okay, that's working. Hang on.
Okay.
There we go.
So for her behavior intervention planning, like when it says, does behavior impede the student's learning or that of others, you checked yes. So like what are some of her behaviors?
You might tell me what page.
At the, let's see. At the bottom of page 14, it says behavior intervention planning. It says that she doesn't need a behavior plan, but
typo that I did. I put that she doesn't need a behavior plan. I don't believe there's a behavior plan in place for her right now.
Yeah, she's pretty young.
She's pretty young. I mean, it was one of the most interesting things. So I had Willow in my classroom for 3 years, so I got to know her really, really well. Is it on the checklist that I put that? Page 14. Yeah,
it says that you checked off yes for, does her behavior impede the student's learning or that of others? Yes, you checked yes. Yeah, for all of them, but the behavior intervention plan.
Yeah, it's not like shown on that IEP, but how that works is either way. Either the positive behavior supports are already incorporated in the behavior plan, which is what she checked, or they're part of a behavior intervention plan, which also is then included in the IEP. So it's if you do it in Enrich or in other ways, that'll be an either or thing. Either it will be that third box or that fourth box.
Okay.
So that's why that is. It's either going to be the supports are already incorporated in the IEP, or it's going to be incorporated in a behavior in that behavior intervention plan, which is both separate and also a part of the IEP.
Gotcha.
I'm totally not even seeing where I put this on here.
Yeah, it's on page 14.
Yeah. Sorry not to put you on the spot. I was just wondering.
No, I think that's a really good point. I'm trying to like flip back to my notes and see what I would have written. So no, I'm gonna put that as a note because I think that's important. And so thanks for clarifying, because this was definitely like one of those things where I was like just working through the process and didn't exactly always know what I was doing.
There's a lot to check off. A lot of things to understand.
Yeah.
Especially if we haven't looked at them that much.
Yeah, well, and I didn't really have, I mean, all I had to compare was the high school one, so I was just trying to then change it for my student.
Right. Gosh darn it, keep getting out of it.
But I guess to answer your question, Chloe, she does have some behaviors that are really distracting, but I don't know that she necessarily has a behavior plan in place based off what her parents said.
Right.
So it is disruptive to her peers, but that's from what I see in my classroom. Now my classroom is fully inclusion, and when she goes to her other school where she would have like a formal behavior plan in place, she is only mainstreamed for like 20% of her day. So I don't know that her behavior, she's in a class of 4 students now. So I don't know that those behaviors would be as distracting, but prior to her transition out of my classroom and into her self-contained classroom, she had behaviors that were really distracting that we were working on. As far as like, she would make really noises, or she was just really like would like to always like she always would say no to everything, but she never wanted to participate. So,
Okay.
anyways, I guess to answer that.
Yeah, thanks. I was just curious.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that. Now I think about it, that also kind of depends on, like you said, whether there's a functional behavioral assessment's been done, or whether it's just a matter of just accommodations.
Yeah. Other than that, I mean, it looked really good.
Oh, I found it. I found it.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. It was definitely a challenge, like trying to like write up percents and like do all of that stuff, like for what my knowledge is for this, but it was a cool process to work through.
Yeah. I mean, do you want to move on, or do you guys have any other thoughts?
Not really.
Okay. Pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go to Shlomo's next.
Okay.
Okay.
So much excitement on this Friday night.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So your student is 11.
Let's see. So I mean, I didn't really know like what to critique or anything about this, and I don't know enough to actually probably make an educated critique. But
No.
go ahead. But I highlighted some things I thought were really cool. Like I thought that like the family's goals for him were really cool. Let's see. I feel like that was a really cool thing to make sure to put in there. I wanted to know more about the fact you put on the secondary IEP goals. You put that Tony's disability prevents him from accessing general education curriculum. And I was just kind of wanting to know a little more about him as far as like why it prevents him from going to the general education classroom. Like what part of disability?
Oh. Well, he can go, and he does spend some time in the general education classroom, but he works on his own. When he's in there, he has his own materials that he's working on. The classroom's kind of the way that the teacher has it set up right now. Well, we didn't know this at the time, but the way that she kind of has this set up, and she has like a classroom economy thing. So he has like a job in the classroom when all the students have jobs and kind of roles that they do. But in terms of the curriculum itself, he's just, I mean, he's working on more of like a kindergarten, early first grade level, and he's in a 5th grade classroom, and it's kind of beyond where we can. There's only so far that differentiation can really go, especially for something like math. You know, he's still working on like 2-digit addition and subtraction, you know, and they're doing their, long division and all of that. So that was kind of where that was coming from. You know, he doesn't really he's in a really kind of a good spot right now, in that he takes part in both like our behavior program, the general education classroom, and the ERR. So he gets to be like the social butterfly of the school, and he has like friends all over the place. So
That's good.
that's supportive.
That's really cool.
That helps him, but like all of his academics come from the extended resource room.
Okay.
I guess, and that makes sense. I guess it's just like foreign to me because, you know, in my classroom, everybody, I mean, we're so young that there's not a huge amount of differentiation between students, and it's pretty easy to differentiate because my kids are all so young.
Mm-hmm.
But I could see it, like, you know, as they get older, the differentiation gap is going to be bigger and bigger and bigger.
Right.
I think, I guess I have a thought, because it's like, you know, one of my students is still learning to recognize letters while the other ones can write letters, but we're still all just working on letters. So the gap between learning isn't so big, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was something new for this year, and that's kind of why we went the way that we did, because with this student, he had been a mixture, a lot more in the gen ed classroom the year before, where he was getting some of that, but this was kind of like the turning point year where everything from day one in 5th grade was over his head. And so that was why we went this way. And with that, in Caldwell, our behavior program and the ERR are in 2 separate buildings. The extended resources at Syringa Middle School and the behavior programs at Jefferson. So they're 2 completely different schools. So one, his eligibility wasn't accurate, so we redid the eligibility, and then we had to like do the whole everything pretty much from the ground up to figure out, you know, does he need the behavior support more at the one school, or the academic support more at the other school? And, you know, wound up being more of the academic side. But that was wise, because like this year was the tipping point that he just could really no longer get any academic gain from what was going on in the gen ed classroom.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I feel like that's so interesting to me, because that's not something I really have like necessarily thought about, because I've never been put in that situation. That's really cool. And I feel like that's probably a like pretty high involved parent conversation too, because how much of that is like teachers like saying we need to work on academics versus like, hey, let's work on life skills, you know, like what, that was my big question here, is like, where do you kind of make that transition of where like we're going to push academics, or where we should maybe pull back on academics and more teach like life skills, like trade skills and that type of thing? Like at what age should we like switch that around?
Yeah. Well, I think part of it's age, and also with this, you know, it's just like I said, you know, when is it that you cross that line, you know, and this happened to be that point. And yeah, it was like the IEP meeting was like over 2 hours long, just over 2 hours long.
Wow.
Because there was just a lot to cover. But yeah, the parent was really on board with everything that we had, because also a lot of what the life skills things that we were also talking about were things that she was also struggling with at home with him, you know, because he wants to like buy things, you know, and he doesn't understand why like the $2 that he has won't buy him like this $10 toy. And so
yeah, I saw that money part in your IEP.
Yeah. So that was like one thing that she was also struggling with at home. So, you know, if it there's the whole like the life skills part of it, but then there's also just supporting him in school in ways that also help him at home and then going on in life. So, so Mom was really on board with everything that we had to say.
That's really good.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I feel like that makes it easier when the parents on board.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It was like the week before that, I had like a 2-hour IEP meeting where it was like the other way around, and we had to justify every word. And
that's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
but
I was just gonna say really quick. So, are you a teacher or are you a para? I don't think I've ever asked you that.
A teacher.
That's what I thought. Okay, because you always say you're involved with IEP meetings. I'm like, he must be a teacher. Okay.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So and so for like the whole, I just, like I said, once I got that feedback from Jeremy, I just did the whole secondary education part with just the idea that the career that we're preparing him for is for ERR middle school. And so that was kind of how I framed it. And then the rest of it was just copying stuff from the original IEP, which was actually like a lot easier because like the original IEP was like long, because when you do the ISAT alt for every goal that you have, you also have to have two, you have to subdivide those into two objectives for the IEP. So for his language, for reading, for math, for behavior, every goal that we had to have so many areas, so many goals, and every one of those goals objectives in there already, plus all of his services. So it's like, this IEP was like over 20 pages long, and I just had to like copy one. That I just copied the math one, because the math goal, because it was the most relevant to this whole discussion. But it's like I just only had to copy that one as opposed to everything. That was like probably that was like the most complicated IEP that I've ever seen, just because it was just such a mixture of strong academic support with the behavior, with everything else.
It's a lot.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was really cool to read. I definitely reading yours. I could definitely tell that you are a teacher and that you're pretty involved in the IEP process.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, well, this is definitely a practice go for her. But I could tell it was really clear. And one thing I thought was really cool too is when you talked about the percentages and how accurate those their goals are based on getting this out of this. I thought that was really interesting. 4 out of 5 opportunities measured by math samples. I see the 4 out of 5 a lot of times, and I'm interested in how you make that determination as a teacher. What is is it 9 out of 10, 4 out of 5, 80%?
It depends. 80% is usually what we do and what we work with most of the time. If a skill is successful, 80% of the time we consider it practiced. Is what it kind of comes down to. There's some skills that may be a little bit more critical. Things like not punching people, stuff like that. Some things where you're coaching on a safety concern or something like that. Where you might want to be a 5 out of 5 or a 9 out of 10, or we'll say 5 out of 5, but then we'll put there 95%, as opposed to the exact 100%. Something like that, maybe a little bit of wiggle room, but usually to 4 out of 5 is what we would consider practiced, and then those are usually broken down when you're doing objectives. You can do it in 20% increments. So, just for starters, you're looking at 40%, and then your next, you're looking to move up to 60 and then to 80.
Okay. That's so helpful. Just so you know, I did not like that's really like, practical real life help.
Well, I always get confused with that because this summer in one of my classes, which I'm sure you guys were in, we had to write objectives, but I used, my professor said that that doesn't help because you don't know, like, what does 70% mean? So she was like, oh, you should use like 3 out of 5 opportunities because that's easier to measure. So I always get confused on like what to use.
Yeah. I'm also just familiar with that verbiage because that was how we did everything. You know, when I was working as a PSR in behavior. You know, we're you know, when I wasn't writing the goals that I always got from the teacher or whoever was always like 4 out of 5.
Right.
Stuff was generally the goal.
Okay.
Cool. All right. Don't have anything else to add to yours. I thought it was good. I thought it was really cool to read.
Yeah, I thought it was well written.
Yeah. All right. Should we move on to yours, Chloe?
Yeah.
My turn.
Your turn.
We even add a real secondary IEP.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I went through and highlighted. So you provided like a lot of really good information. I loved like the fact that you added like his personal attributes, that he's persistent and determined. He has like really good memory. And auditory kinesthetic learner. I just felt like those are like really like I like highlighted those like words. Like so I was like thinking, as his teacher, like that's a good thing to know. That's a really good thing to reference. Like have these out to me.
Yeah, with my student, I really wish I could follow him throughout high school just because like he has so much potential. If he would just slow down a little bit, you know, it would be so much better for him, but he is so bright. Like if you look at his STAR reading and math test for 0.3 and then math he's grade equivalent of 12 and he's in 10th grade, so he's definitely above average in his grade.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
Yeah, that was something that I found kind of interesting. That he was still on an IEP with that high.
And what's interesting with him is like when I first saw that data, I was really surprised too because he's so good in math, but like with his math test he just took this week, you know, he got a D on it. But he rushes, like his thing is to rush through as fast as he can so he can listen to his music. So that's what we're working on with him is slow down, take your time, so you don't get mad when you see that you have a D, because obviously he's very bright.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
And then I wasn't really sure for the guys's on the first page, the cover page, where it said IEP team information. I mean, I just put people that attended.
Right.
Do you think I need to put like fake names, or do you think that like SLP is acceptable?
Yeah, I think what you did was fine.
I think what you did was fine. I definitely went like I was put in fake names for mine because I knew all these people attended, but I was like, making up fake names, and then I was like, shoot, now I have to go back and use the same name in my IEP, so the same person is actually doing the thing. So what you did.
Okay.
One thing I had. Oh, go ahead.
No, I just kind of dialed back and just used everyone's first name. They're real first names, but it's just first names.
Right. That's totally fine.
But you know, it's not going anywhere. But here in Jeremy, so
right. We're good.
One thing I had a question about, and I didn't know if it mattered or not, but so in his post-secondary, I think it's like the 1, 2, 3, 4th page in his post-secondary education and training. He said Raymond will research at least 2 colleges that offer computer programming or 3D focused courses But I think you also referenced in here like that he maybe I made this up. I'm trying to remember that straight.
I think I mentioned a couple things for like what he wanted to do. But,
yeah. And I guess okay, yeah. And I was wondering like if you said tech school. So yeah, in the first page, the second page you said tech school and this one said college. And I didn't know if that should be clarified or not. I don't know. It was a weird thing that I like caught on to, but I was like, colleges and tech schools could be really different. So I didn't know if that, I don't know. I just had to think about it.
That's actually a really good point. I didn't even notice that I did that. But I probably should clarify that because those are two different things. Yeah, I'll make a note of that. That's a good point.
I don't know if that, and I mean, not like a big deal, but I was like, I mean,
if you have a question on it, I'm sure someone else would have a question on it. So, no, that's a good point to clarify. Because I think for him, I think that it could be too difficult, but he definitely has potential to, I think, go to a tech school.
Yeah, well, and it seems like he would be successful in college if that was what he wanted, but then I think you referenced in here that wasn't really something he wanted. It was more of like just to start working and be able to do what he loves, it seemed like.
Yeah.
And so then I was like, well, college might not be the thing for him then, but maybe like a tech school would be really beneficial for him.
Right. Yeah, thank you for that. That's a good point.
Yeah.
And what's really cool about when he is a junior, we bring our juniors to the college fair. So it won't be me, it'll be the other special ed teacher that has him, but they go to the college fair at the fairgrounds, which I think is a really cool opportunity. So that will be added eventually to his IEP.
Yeah.
Just options for him.
Let's see. I thought your optional statement and service delivery, I felt like so clear. I think that was really cool how you stated all of that stuff.
I did have a little help, so it did help a little bit.
Let's see.
I can't take all the credit.
The testing and the accommodation section I think was also really well done. Those could be tricky things to get. Because I mean you have to like relist all the accommodations for each test, and that in some ways it just seems kind of redundant. But and then it's like, you know, even just thinking of what to identify for those, you know, just remembering, oh yeah, we do have this option, maybe we should put that in there. One thing that my mentor over at the school kind of what he'll tend to do is just like put like any accommodations that may be relevant for the student there, just so we have it in the IEP, that he can have them, because I mean otherwise, you know, you're kind of cutting yourself off in terms of what you can do. So just to have the whatever options that he thinks would possibly help, because he doesn't have to have them, you know, if he doesn't need to, but if he does, then, you know, it's there in the IEP and we can do that.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I think that's really good. That was one thing Willow's mom, when I was talking to her, that she was saying that's like an approach that she likes to do, is like she called it like the kitchen sink approach. She literally like did everything that you just for the basis that like you would have all the services you needed if you needed them, but if not, you wouldn't be stuck with like something that wasn't working. But yeah, in that page too, back to the one thing that I guess I did want to, I was like, I want to save that paragraph for my own future reference, like taking into account like therapy schedules, time off, calendar year, like all of the minutes and all that stuff. I thought that was really, like, along with it being so clear, I was like, oh, that's a really good thing. I should nugget for like referencing if I were to make my own IEP. Just didn't think take those things into account, and after reading it, I was like, oh yeah, because you do have to make sure they get their minutes, but then they have Thanksgiving break, and then they have early release, and then they have this and they have that, and it's like, whoa.
Because I went through some of this with my mentor teacher, and she mentioned that part, and I'm like, you really don't think about that. All these days that these kids have off, or you really don't think about that. So that's a really good point too. And I also like that paragraph.
Yeah, I was like, that's really important.
Yeah, totally.
And like medicated build for speech, I thought, I was like, ooh, that, I need to nugget that.
Mm-hmm. Which, when I did look at his original IEP, I was pretty shocked that like he doesn't have as much speech as I thought he did. Like on his original, it said like 60 minutes a month or something. And I never see the speech therapist work with him, which is really weird. I mean, she must if she does come to our school, like, because we are in the resource room. But like with his speech, he's very difficult to understand, especially when he talks really fast. So that's something that I do want to ask her is like, can you, I mean, I don't know how that works, like to bump up his time, but he really needs it because he's very difficult to understand. And like when he has an employer or when he has to talk to people, he talks so fast.
So is it just a speed thing, or are there like phonemes and diphthongs and stuff that he doesn't pronounce correctly?
No, he pronounces everything correctly.
Okay.
It's just I think he gets really excited. It's really fast.
So that would kind of make sense because like a lot of times with the speech SLP will work on is they're really kind of focused on, well, they can focus on whatever they need to, but a lot of their bread and butter, what they do is like getting the mouth to make the right sounds,
like articulation.
Articulation,
like,
things
that
like
kind
that,
of stuff,
and like different sounds and blends and things that students really tend to get stuck on and to struggle with, and to provide that for something like if he's just speaking really fast, but he's speaking well, but just fast, then that could be more of like an advisory thing, something that like everybody just needs to coach him on slowing down. And that doesn't necessarily need the services of an SLP to just tell him, hey, speak slower. Or
that's a good point. And that's what I try to do, and then he gets mad. I'm like, well, I mean, if I can't understand you, I can't answer your question. I'm sorry. But yeah, we're trying that. That's a really good point. Let's see.
I feel like that's all I have for yours, Chloe. I thought it was really well done. I thought you had like some really good like parts. I have like highlighted them like zoop, 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 zoop all over these things that I thought were really helpful.
Well, good. I feel bad that Hillary isn't joining us, but I mean, should we go through hers anyways? Or
how are we not?
We're a little over 30 minutes.
I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know what she would want.
Bring hers up again real quick.
I made several notes on hers, but I don't know if we should go over it or what.
I mean, I think we could take like 5 minutes, just like an extra 5 minutes, and just look at it really fast.
Yeah.
And then I could send her the link and she could like see our feedback maybe.
Yeah.
Right.
When I was reading hers, there actually was one thing I thought was really interesting. It said, let me go to it. It was about the testing. Let's see. Let's see. It was. Darn it, I must have passed it. I know
Was it the drop in the star scores?
No, it wasn't that. But that is important too. I think it was this one. Oh no, it was for Willow. Never mind, that was my note. I wrote for yours that parents refused to have her participate in state testing.
Oh yeah.
I thought that was interesting. I just forgot to say it for yours.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting too. When I asked them about it in my interview, they said like Willow.
I didn't know that.
You didn't know what?
I didn't know that could be done.
Oh yeah, I guess. Well, I don't know if it can in Idaho, but in the state of Washington, it can.
Oh, okay.
And
That's kind of odd.
They had tried to do last year. They tried to do state testing with her, and she was so overwhelmed, and like it wasn't even something that she was like capable of like participating in. I mean, it like even with all accommodations, it was just not something that was like useful for her time, and like for any like it just was too challenging. So
right.
They just refused to do it and like work on a lot. I mean their focus right now is mostly on like individual goals, like self-help goals, like trying to like maintain like follow through with one-step directions and like so that's where even the like early ed the iPad accommodations on all the things, it was just too challenging.
Yeah. That makes a little more sense.
Yeah.
I was like, that doesn't look right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, but I think for the rest of Hillary's, it was pretty straightforward. I think for a while it was a little bit. It struck me as kind of odd that there was parts of it where she was in Dubois, but then also there's like stuff in there from like Bora High School, and I'm like, wait a second,
yeah,
so
I did.
Like how that was kind of following her from the previous year.
Right, so it's like not as relevant, I guess.
Yeah.
Um,
I thought that she should add in trade schools. Like she talked about like additional student input, that she like loved like to help animals, like mechanics, like further cosmetology, and I didn't really see anything about like trade school. It said that she wants to go to like she's putting off secondary education or post-secondary education.
Yeah, like that. Like there's going to be like within a year, she would visit one to see if she wanted to go there.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like my big question, obviously, and it's like none of my business, but it was like, well, if you wait a year, I felt afraid of for her. I was like, well, if she waits a year to do that, like she might not do that at all.
Right.
Yeah.
That's where I thought like maybe like directing her in the way of trade school might be helpful, especially like vet tech school, or like all of the things that she like mentioned that she like was really interested in. I was like, there's trade schools for all of those things, or like quick like 9-month program schools.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that, and then I guess I just had like some like questions. Like I thought they maybe could have been a little more specific. Like she has strengths and weaknesses in areas of transition, academics, and self advocacy. And I was just like, well, what are those strengths and weaknesses? Like you describe them a little more for me. It was just like my question. There's a few things in there where I was like, that's a good like statement, but then I want to know more. Like, what does that mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Like it says she's grown a great deal of effort this year, like in the number 2 box. And I was like, well, what does that mean? Like she made like attempts to like show up to school every day, or does that mean like she's like stay? You know what I mean? Like it was like, what does that mean for the student?
Right.
Right. You want something you can quantify, like you said. Yeah. Like something like she increased her attendance, or increased her reading proficiency, and by these numbers, you want to see something. I mean, that was one thing that I had with incoming IEP that we had from out of state earlier in the year, and they like the student had, I may have mentioned, I don't know if it's this class or not, I may have mentioned it, but the student like had all these goals, but there was like no baseline data, so nothing. And so it's like, okay, I have no idea whether these are just generic goals or like, how ambitious are these goals, and, where was this student at, when this IEP was written. I have like no idea.
Yeah.
And even for me too, I think sometimes like I forget like how specific we have to be, because you don't know like when you're going to have to explain yourself or show this to someone else. Like, yeah.
Yeah, that was like I guess when I think of like that's where I think like the difference between like IEP is versus like the digital transition portfolio, which is like I absolutely love that project. But
Me
I was
too.
like that was more generalized, and I was like I felt like that was much more fun and way more informational in some ways. But then I feel like the IEP needs to be like the nitty gritty. Like tell me how many times, tell me all of the details that like are long and boring and like are book reading.
Exactly.
Like I need to know that information in here. And then the transition IEP would be like, okay, like this is what she like. This is where some of these statements. But I was like, what does it mean when she's strengthening her overall reading? Like, is she reading a book a day? Is she trying to increase like an hour a day? Like, what does that mean in terms of academics or like
Definitely
goals?
Yeah, that was definitely how I saw the whole thing too. Is that you have the, like I said, like the nitty gritty by the numbers details in the IEP, and then for the portfolio you can kind of step back and look at the bigger picture. But at the same time, kind of I think the portfolio was fun, but the other challenge of it was the fact that you have to have the nitty gritty details to have an accurate and big picture statement as well. So it was definitely a different dimension, in that it just digests just the way that it was the same information but digested in a way.
more formal way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly. I think like the baseline information, like some of those things are so important to know, because I just didn't think like, especially in early childhood, and I think time is valuable for everybody, but in the like the more vague you are, that's more time the teacher's going to have to be testing and trying to figure out like where that student is, which is so valuable time that could be lost. And so I'm just thinking like the more specific we are, the more we can jump right in and be like, okay, we know you can do A, B, and C. Now we need to work on D, E, and F. Like, let's go. And versus like, okay, we're going to do 7 activities to see if you know these first 3 letters. Hopefully you do, maybe you don't. Now we'll move on. Right? That could have been a month or 2 that you would have lost really important time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's like one thing that I've like kind of the point of view that I've always taken, not always, but since I started this year, that I've really taken with the IEPs or the behavior plans or whatever, is like if for some reason like this student like left this school district tomorrow, would the paperwork that followed them be accurate? With wherever the student's going, whatever documentation that we sent them, would they be prepared to handle this student? And so that's kind of always how I do things and how I want things written, because that's not always the courtesy that you get the other end. Like you said, you get these kids come in and things aren't written clearly, or that doesn't happen. Then like you said, you have to go back and retest things and refigure out what it is that you're doing, and that's time that could be spent in other ways.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I think just so for Hillary's, I think she did a good job. She just needs to be a little bit more specific.
Yeah.
Just clean it up a little bit, and I think it'll be really good.
Yeah, I thought she had a lot of really good like practical transitionary. Like she's definitely like a high school student, and like there's a lot of big transitions happening. And I thought she made sure to like note of all of those, but just to be a little more specific, like you said, Chloe, it was just like had a lot of really good information on there. Just needs a little more detail.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So cool.
Well, I think this is our longest one yet. We should be proud of ourselves. Anything else you guys want to add?
I don't think so.
No.
I think we answered everything. Well, if that's it, I'll submit this for everybody and we'll be good.
Awesome. Thank you so much for always submitting everything.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm just glad I can understand a Google Hangout now because in the beginning I was really confused.
Well, we appreciate it that you took one for the team on that one because I know how to do the Google Hangout, but I have no clue how to do the recording. I haven't even tried. So.
That's all right. I don't mind. All right. Well, I guess have a good break and I'll see you guys next time.
All right, sounds
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.